We thank you all for coming tonight to commemorate Yom Hashoah, a night of remembrance for the Jewish people who perished amidst the horrors of the Holocaust.
Throughout the world, Yom Hashoah commemoration sparks reflection about the tragedies of the Holocaust, educating the current generation and ensuring never again does the world succumb to such an atrocity against humanity. So tonight, we remember. We remember the times Jews were forced to mark their identities and outcast themselves with the yellow Star of David. We remember the cruelty and heartless values which infected Germany and Eastern Europe. We remember the children who were separated from their fathers and mothers, taken in transports to gas chambers and stripped of their childhood.
We remember those enslaved, malnourished, slaughtered, and beaten to death in labour camps. We remember those who held on to their faith in the face of adversity, and those who regained belief along the way. We remember the brave fighters, those that risked their life and persevered through treacherous conditions, resisting surrender. We remember the righteous among the nations who consciously risked their lives for Jewish strangers, those who hid families, rescued children, and created false paperwork for the innocent victims.
Today, we stand here thanks to those who fought for the existence of the Jewish people. For many of us, these heroes were and are our parents, grandparents, family and friends, and it is our duty to remember and honour their legacy. As the next generation, we must enact our responsibility by ensuring the legacies and testimonies of those who witnessed the Holocaust remain prevalent today and as time progresses. Now more than ever, we implore you to understand the gravity of this responsibility as we remain the last generation to witness accounts firsthand with the ability to record and pass on this message.
This year, we are focusing on the theme, Life After. In this way, we will consider what life was like for Holocaust survivors after the war and how they rebuilt their life. Moreover, Life After refers to our obligation to cherish our remaining time with Holocaust survivors and honour their legacy in educating future generations about their struggle. As we begin this ceremony, we ask that you please refrain from applause and turn off your phones. Thank you.
On that day, the remnant came out, 2 from a city, 1 from a village. A woman and her child came out of a bunker under the ruins. A man came out of a sewer. Survivors came out of the forests of the partisans. The rescued came out of Auschwitz. In Europe, the sun was shining and the world was back on its course. They stood among heaps of ashes, a flaming stone in their hearts.
World War II ended in May 1945 with dancing in the streets, though much of Europe had been reduced to rubble. While most of the world celebrated the end of 6 years of war, there was no happy ending for the Jews. For them, the moment of liberation came too late. Entire communities had been wiped out.
We are free now, but we don't know how to begin our free but unfortunate lives. We have forgotten how to laugh. We cannot cry anymore. We do not comprehend our freedom.
Just as the period before the Holocaust must be taught, the period after the Holocaust must be taught as well in order to present the full human story. By the end of the Holocaust, the survivors' lives had been shattered. Some would never manage to rehabilitate themselves. We will focus here on the majority, those who mustered all their strength and somehow managed to return to life. Many of them were alone in the world and started with nothing, yet somehow they made their way back from the edge of the abyss. Their fight and their resilience is an extraordinary story, since it is far from obvious that people who had been through the trauma of the Holocaust would have the strength to return to life. The International School for Holocaust Studies at Yad Vashem used a number of study units, both in print and online. They contain pictures, posters, testimonies by survivors, and background materials, some of which we will discuss here. For those Jews who had survived the Holocaust, the fight to stay alive had tapped all their physical strength. In most cases, the survivors were weak and sick. Some were on the verge of death. Many were human skeletons. They had to be nursed slowly back to health and given desperately needed medical attention. Of those who made it to the moment of liberation, thousands died immediately afterwards.
But after it sank in, the freedom, I realized that where I was hoping the whole time that I will see my father, and maybe hope beyond hope my mother, although I knew that this is not a realistic hope.
Most of the survivors had to fight so hard just to stay alive that they didn't have the capacity or the ability to confront the fates of their loved ones. Up until liberation, many had expended all their energy on surviving from minute to minute. Now they realized that their entire families were gone. Their lives would never be the same. While the rest of the world was counting the dead, the Jews were counting the living.
Where I was elated by the freedom, there was tremendous fear. Who will I find? How will we survived this, but we have to go back to civilization. How will we react in a normal world again? We are here two young girls without anything. We were afraid we will have nobody. And we needed somebody that could spoil us, that could take care of us. We have to make a future for ourselves, and how will we make that future?
The journey through chaotic post-war Europe was very difficult. The trains weren't running, infrastructure had been damaged, refugees were jamming the roads. Some refugees journeyed hundreds of miles for weeks and weeks just to get home. One question we can ask is, what is home? Is it just a location? Why would they want to go home? They searched for what remained of their families and their communities in the familiar places in which they had once lived.
In Athens, I met a neighbor who had been with my brother at Yavorzno camp. Right away, I asked him about my brother, and he made circles in the air with his finger, meaning my brother had been taken to the crematorium in Auschwitz. I almost passed out. I didn't know what to do with myself. I had thought that he was the only one who could have remained alive. He was strong. His name was Avraham, and from that day, no one came back.
They searched for what remained of their families and communities in those familiar places in which they had once lived. But when they got to those places, their families and their communities were gone. Home was no longer the image they had clung to during all the years of the war in order to survive. In some Eastern European countries, as many as 90% of the Jews had been murdered. According to one post-war survey, 3/4 of the survivors were the only survivor of their entire families. Survivors who managed to return to the places where they had once lived often had to confront hostile anti-Semitic reactions of the local populations, especially in Eastern Europe. For instance, on July 4th, 1946, in a place called Kielce, 42 Jews were murdered by their neighbors. As many as 1,500 Jews were murdered in Poland immediately after the war.
I went home. I didn't have anywhere I could stay. I had aunts and family. I went to see all their apartments. There were non-Jews living in every one. They wouldn't let me in. In one place, one of them said, "What did you come back for? They took you away to kill you. So why did you have to come back?" I decided, I'm not staying here, I'm going.
Once again, many Jews lived in fear. They began to think, would it be possible to resuscitate their Jewish communities in these places that they had lived for generations? Many of them began to leave. The big question was, where would they go?
We would now like to invite Irma Hanna, a survivor of Theresienstadt, to share her survival testimony.
Okay. Good evening, and I thank you for coming. I never had such a big audience. The schools usually have. but I will try my best. I was born in 1930 in Dresden, Germany. I had a good childhood till the age of 8, but I went to a Jewish school, which was my backbone even today. I had a good life, but 1938, Hitler, the Nazis, decided to get rid of us. Germany didn't even have 1% of Jews, not even 1%. Hitler, Nazis blamed us for losing the First World War. Communism and capitalism, they blamed us for everything. Not even 1% of Jews in Germany. And contrary to what Hitler said, that all Jews are rich, rubbish. I came from a poor family, but the Jewish society here or everywhere else, others, they help each other. So that fateful day, when they decided to burn down our synagogue in every German city, 150 of them, including Dresden. Our school was attached more or less to our synagogue. So when they destroyed our school at the synagogue, our school was damaged very much so. Now I have to tell you a little bit our history of our population. We had a lot of Jews came after the Russian Revolution and the East, they came to Germany. Before the Nazis, Germany was a democratic country. So they tried a better life. So 90% of my school friends, their grandparents came from Russia or from the East, from Poland, wherever, to make a better life. So our school existed of kindergarten, middle school and high school. We were 250. You know how many we survived? 6. I one here, 2 in Israel, 2 in America, and 1 still in Dresden, but he just died. So in the teachers, only 2 survived. So you can see the enormity. It didn't hit us. With the age of 8, it didn't penetrate. But the family tried to protect us, me. And then school was closed. We couldn't go. And Hitler decided, in 1939, when the war started, all those Jews which came originally from the East were stripped of their citizenships. So there were no more German Jews. So they were the first ones to be transported to Latvia, Riga. So that's where most of my school friends perished, were murdered, and our teachers. So the enormity was terrible. 1938, before the war, he decided, Hitler, we had to wear Staff David. And you had to wear this correctly, that everybody could see. The cruelty was unbearable, walking in the street. They used to bash me, they used to spit at us, and they called us bloody Jews. I was not allowed to go to a cinema anymore. We were not allowed to have my family. We were thrown out of public service. They were thrown out from wherever they worked. And they went to non-Jewish schools, so they had friends for years. And all of a sudden, because they found out they're Jews, they dropped them like hot potatoes. And that was everyday occurrence. A park. We had a park on the street, you had a bench. There was a sign for dogs and Jews only. You know, the humiliation, it never left me, quite honestly. And they fixed up the school a little bit. Like I said, the war started in 1939. So the first Jews which were transported, They were gone. Every day we went back to school, there was somebody missing. Friends, teachers. We didn't know where they went. Eventually, gradually, somebody found out. They had went to Riga or to other places. And life was very lonely. In 1941, our school had to be closed because there were no young people left. Sorry, I have to drink, otherwise it's impossible. So we had to, the school was closed and we were left to our own devices, the few of us which are left. I still have a picture here from our last party in our school. It's here in the museum. And eventually, I walked home one day. My father was gone. I don't know until today what happened to him. And my mother was gone. That was in 1939. The war started September. In November, I walked home and my mother was gone. Unknown to me, she was a bit of a lefty. She didn't belong to a communist party, apparently we found out much, much later. And she was arrested, she was taken to a concentration camp which was established by Himmler for men in Sachsenhausen and for women in Ravensbrück. And there they had people, Jehovah's Witnesses, gypsies, homosexuals, and political prisoners. And my mother and a few others, unlucky, they had two things, Jewish and political. And you know, we found out 10 years after the war what they did to those people. Jehovah's Witnesses, they did medical experiments, tetanus, gas gangrene, and sterilization. And we found out my mother died she was murdered, I call it murder, in 1942 because she lost her legs, so gas gangrene. Women had to fill the freeway there. Women in the biggest winter and cold and wet, so you can imagine. But I didn't find this out later. And going back to my story, 41 and 42. In 1942, they decided transport started. And I was picked up. We had to have also, forgot to tell you, I had my auntie was married to a Gentile, not Jewish. And if not for him, I wouldn't have survived the first day. He saved my life to begin with. And because he was not Jewish, my auntie and my uncle were punished severely. My uncle would not divorce my auntie. So we had to shift somewhere else, in not a nice neighborhood, and it was a factory. On the bottom was a cannery, and we lived on top. So we had every night, the doorbell rang at 7 o'clock, Gestapo, to make sure that we had no Christians there. My uncle was not allowed to see his mother or anybody. Every night. So that was 42. One day, I walked out in the street and I decided I did not care. I was warned not to do it. I walked and I covered my Star of David with my school satchel. And I walked a lot of streets. All the while I felt somebody followed me. I wasn't sure. And then after 8 streets, I just remember the warning, don't cover up. That was my mistake. I took off my school satchel, and sure enough, I came home that night, and told my auntie and uncle. They said, oh, you're probably imagining it. Well, sorry to say I didn't. Because a week later, remember I said there was a cannery there? That man who had me followed was a Nazi. And he wanted to know why the Gestapo comes every night to control us. And that was what I felt, that somebody followed me, and that was the reality. A week later, the doorbell rings 7 o'clock in the morning. My uncle just left to work in the ammunition factory. He was a musician. He used to play in a music orchestra. So he was punished severely too. He worked in the ammunition factory. My auntie was ready to go and work there too. And the doorbell rang. The staff entered the apartment and they ordered my auntie to pack a little suitcase. And they took me. She picked the suitcase, and I tell you what, she didn't know what she put in. I only remember she put a little Negro doll with a hula skirt in the suitcase, my favorite. He seen the suitcase, he opened it, and he took it out and stamped on it. And that was, look, it will never leave me. They took me into out of Dresden, a big place, a huge place, where they collected all the Jews around the area. Saxony is very big, there are lots of districts. So I was there 6 months. My uncle went to the Gestapo. You know what is the Gestapo, the secret police. He wanted to adopt me. They would not allow that, and they couldn't help me anything. And then they started transports. Half a year I was there, and I never forget the transports. You didn't see the film. You know the transports that they deported us in cattle trains. Well, I was ordered into one, and they closed the door, and then they opened it again and called my name out. I didn't know why. I had to go into another wagon. Apparently, the first one, we found out later, went to Auschwitz. And I was taken to Czechoslovakia, Theresienstadt, into a ghetto. I don't know if you heard about it. Sorry. It's in Czechoslovakia, it's about 150 kilometers from Dresden. Beautiful place, but it was taken, Hitler said, we give the Jews a city, Theresienstadt. And the city was named like a city. We had a mayor walking around in a robe, we had doctors, we had rabbis, everything. Had to be run like a city. But the day I arrived, I'll never forget as long as I live. We had to stand in queue in the rows, and they had tables. SS, you know what the SS is? They were the worst, the cruelest you can think of. And doctors, sitting there to see where we could go, who was able to work and who's not. I needed desperately to go to a toilet. I don't know if I should tell you that, but that's my story, and that's what I say. I could speak German because it was established for German Jews, Czechoslovakian Jews, and Austrians originally. And I needed to go in the toilet desperately. And a girl behind me, she said, me too. They took us quite a long way into a latrine. You know what is a latrine? A latrine is a ditch with a piece of wood to sit on. That girl fell into this, got out. Nobody helped her to get out. That was my first day, and believe me, I'm an old woman there. I'll never forget it as long as I lived. And I went back, and eventually they gave us girls, 20 girls, a room, not that high ceilings, a quarter the size of this, 20 girls, and one Czechoslovakian lady, about 40 or so, she was in charge of us. I was 12 years old then, 12. And 20 girls between the 12 and 16 years of age. We had given us a straw mattress, woolen blanket, and we had 3 deer rugs. And you know how cold Europe gets? The worst thing, when they took our suitcases away, they took our shoes away. They gave us wooden clocks. Can you imagine walking in winter, especially snow, working outside with wooden clocks? Unbearable. The girls went and came. Transports were going by the thousands. Eventually, it was not a ghetto anymore, it was a transit camp. Because they brought Jews from every country, 21 countries which they invaded. They sent Jews to us, to other places, Auschwitz, and whoever was able to work. It was a Durchgangslager. You know, you were not always settled there. You had to be very lucky like me. I was a very lucky girl because in 43, 11 young men escaped. Winter, cold, wet, and they marched us out, 40,000 of it. Between 40 and 50,000 human beings. They marched us out and they told us, you stay here as long as it takes, we'll catch them. And I got the record of it. 36 hours. They caught them and they hung them in front of us and they told us, you see what happens when you run away? You get caught and hung. You know, that march, how many people died? Starvation and diseases. We had encephalitis, we had dysentery, we had jaundice, we had typhus. And typhus because we had millions of lice, and lice bring typhus, and no hygiene. So you can imagine that march there, and then we had to march back. And that I remember only one thing. I marched back and I collapsed. And the lady who was in charge of us, she was an inmate from Czechoslovakia, and she had a friend from before the war. He was also an inmate, a doctor. Apparently I had very high fever. I had no chance to survive. Not so I couldn't work or anything, because I had to work too. So he came in the middle of the night, he removed my tonsils. Nobody could believe it, even after the war or during, to see that I survived that. That I survived tonsillectomy. He put a clothes peg on my tongue and he took my tonsils out. That I survived that miracle. And you know what I said to the children? Somebody out there wanted me to survive. That was all the time, diseases and sicknesses. And Jewish faith, we had to learn at night. That lady taught us at night, because we were not allowed to learn. So in the museum, if you ever come, there is a Jewish New Year card, which I made in secret, and it nearly cost me my life. I had it hidden, and I gave it to the museum here. Then, beginning, it was, I forgot to tell you, we had 40,000 people. That place was originally a training for army, a camp for training armies. So you can imagine that these things which are going on there, it was unbearable. I had to work, we had to work, in a factory in the beginning, splitting mica. Mica is a mineral which they use for the aircraft industry. It produces a powder like we have asbestos here. It can go into your system and stay there for years. We had all sorts of these things. Anyway, when eventually they decided, they had complaints from the International Cross. They make a film. So Eichmann came, you know who Eichmann was, and a few of the Nazis, the SS, and they decided to make a film in Theresienstadt with the Red Cross. And you know what they did? They painted some rooms. They opened the coffee house. They gave us money, which you see in the museum too. And they, soccer had to be played, music and theater had to perform. They had a whole lot, and they used to come a lot. Music, the orchestra what we had, one lady just died not long ago. She was 106 years old. She survived because she played the piano. So it was a miracle. And the work later on, I was lucky again. After 2 or 3 months, I worked in a field growing the vegetables. You know, I forgot to tell you our starvation food, what I call it. We had a water coffee in the morning. Twice a day we had vegetable soup, which consisted of water and vegetables. If the ladle went down to the bottom, you had more vegetables than water. If it went halfway, you had more water than vegetables. And once a week, a few slices of sausage and jam, and if you were lucky, we had a bit of sugar. That was our starvation food. So you can imagine, people were sick, dying like flies. And then, when they left, they had tables, you know, they put out this food. You haven't seen the film. You know the wagons which normally picked up dead people, they died at the job, whatever. They were put in wagons and cremated. But these wagons had to be painted white, and normally people who picked up dead people had white cloths, white coats on. It was laid in this bed. A merry-go-round was put up. This food, can you imagine? People didn't think of consequences. Starving people with food around it. They took and they stopped the filming. They never had a chance to show the film. And that was the end of it. And then towards 44, end of 44 nearly, they knew they lost the war. They decided to finish us off inside, no more transports. Because they had a transport of 11 transports they sent to Auschwitz, and Auschwitz was the first one to get liberated. The Russians were near Auschwitz, so they sent all 11 transports back to their cargo. They called it their cargo, whichever concentration camp or workplace they could find to put their cargo. One of them came back to Theresienstadt. Believe you me, I seen it. 3/4 of the people were dead. There were 2 or 3 weeks on the rail to find a place where they put them. And then they decided another thing. How do we finish you off inside? Well, you have an insect here, Ross River disease. It's caused by mosquito bites. There, they had an insect which produced encephalitis. You know what is encephalitis? It affects your brain, your nervous system. And there are 2 ladies here still alive. They were last week in commemoration. Twins. They were experimented by Mengele. They were originally from Theresienstadt, Czech Jews, and one of them was a nurse. They survived, they came here, and she recognized me. They recognized me here from what I was sick with the encephalitis. So, what is it? Miracle? Miracle. Luck and miracles. That's what I call it. Anyway, finally, we were liberated on the 8th of May by the Russian army in the middle of the night. And I tell you the honest truth, we didn't believe it, first of all. And some of the girls got raped. And in the morning, the officers came, some of them were Jewish or not, they made order. They gave us some shoes, they gave us some other clothes, some of us had no underwear. So, but then the realization hit us. What's going to happen to us? Where are our families? Who's going to look after us? Where are we going to go? Well, eventually it was decided I was supposed to go to Sweden. There, I tell you how my auntie and uncle survived. And I also had an uncle which was arrested on the night of the class. Remember I said the night of the class? I forgot to tell you. At that night, they arrested 30,000 Jewish men and put them into prison. My uncle, we had family in England. My uncle was smuggled out and he went to England. But the only way he could go to England, he had to join the English army. So he was fighting 6 years in the English army against the Germans. And eventually he came to Australia as a 10-pound Tommy. You probably don't know about it, but that's how I came here in 49. But he found me through the Red Cross. My auntie survived the night of the bombing. You know, when they bombarded Dresden to smithereens, the city, they ran away in the countryside. From February till May, they were hidden with a farmer in Dresden, and they saved his life and he saved theirs. And they were also eventually notified that I survived. And my auntie in July, May was liberation, in July I didn't get back into Dresden. And I tell you the truth, I was very, very ill. I ended up in hospital there. I had 3/4 of a stomach left. I couldn't eat a meal for years. And something else, I could not cry for 2 years. I couldn't. I was locked up, and I call it self-preservation. I was determined unconsciously that I want to survive, and I did not want to live in Germany, quite honestly. My auntie took me back, and that was the worst thing for me. I didn't want to speak German, and then when she told the neighbors what happened to me, and my auntie and her sister, my mother and sister, they said, oh, we didn't know anything about it. Well, you know, that made me so angry. They didn't know anything about it. Of course they did. There were some people who helped. They did. Some people put their own lives on to help Jews. Not many, but they did. So not to say they didn't know anything about it. I eventually went to Berlin, a Jewish organization in America, United, they help Jews after the war. So I went into a kibbutz. I did not want to live in Germany. I wanted to go to Israel, but Israel didn't exist yet. Sorry. So I stayed in the kibbutz. And 90% of the kibbutz, they are all from Russia or from Germany. They had nobody. And I was nearly 2 years in the kibbutz. But then when Israel wasn't established yet, sorry, the whole kibbutz went illegally to Israel. My auntie would not allow me. I was 18, I needed permission. She said, no, I got you out alive on one. There's going to be war there. And she was right. Because we were dancing in Berlin when Israel was established, dancing. And I wasn't there. They all went. They had trouble getting into Israel too, because the English forgave. So it was my school friend, my closest school friend. He went to Israel, and he's got 6 children. And I went 5 times to Israel. Anyway, when I came to Australia eventually, I was young, I had no education. I had only 4 years of school, and I had to go to work. My uncle had nothing much. My auntie came after 9 months. They wouldn't let my uncle in because he was a German, and then he did come, wanted to play music, he couldn't play music. So it was, their lives was ruined, and my mother, of course, that's my father. I had no other siblings, so it was a very bittersweet realization. But then Australia, thank God for Australia, that's what I say. Best country in the world. Our only hope and pray, because I don't like what's going on again today. Hate is worse than a cancer. And we have to fight whichever way we can. We shouldn't allow it to happen again. You shouldn't, because I know I got a friend in Germany. She's not Jewish. She worked here for 2 years, and we're in touch with her. She said, what is going on in Europe again? Every country is extreme right. In Dresden, demonstrations again. against the Jews, against the Muslims. It is a disaster. And I really hope and pray that we keep good here, and we should not allow it. Thank you very much. I don't know if you want me to talk more. I can tell you more. I'll tell you one thing. I went after the war in Berlin to Wannsee. Have you heard Wannsee? Yes? Wannsee is a museum today. It was even then. It's a long table with 14 chairs. That meant 14 Nazis decided in 1942 the final solution. So 14 people decided 6 million Jews to kill, 1.5 million kids amongst them, and 5 million others. 14 people decided the fate of 11 million people. Think about it. Thank you.
Thank you, Emma, for sharing your personal testimony with us. Each person here tonight has gained valuable insight into the struggles dealt with most by the Holocaust and the challenge of establishing a new life after such atrocity. The concepts you described are pivotal in guiding our continued commemoration of the Holocaust and highlight the importance of educating future generations on the tragedies of the past so that they do not happen again. Please welcome Gabby Davis singing Achenu.
אחינו, כמו בית ישראל, אחינו, כמו בית ישראל, הנתונים בצער ובשביה, העומדים בין בים ובין ביבשה. אחינו, כל בית ישראל, אחינו, כל בית ישראל, הנתונים בצער ובשביה, העומדים בין בים ובין ביבשה. המקום ירחם עליהם ויוציאם מצרה לרווחה ומאפל לאורה ומשיר בוי לגאולה שתה בגלה ובזמן קריב. אחינו, כל בית ישראל, אחינו, כל בית ישראל, הנתונים בצער ובשביה, העומדים בין בים ובין ביבשה. המקום ירחם עליהם ויוציאם מצרה לרווחה ומאפל לאורה ומשיר בוי לגאולה שתה בגלה ובזמן קריב. המקום ירחם עליהם ויוציאם מצרה לרווחה ומאפל לאורה ומשיר thala ובזמן
Please welcome Alyssa Capps to the stage to read The Action in the Ghetto of Roasin by survivor Alexander Kimmel, written in March 1942.
Do I want to remember? The peaceful ghetto before the raid, children shaking like leaves in the wind, mothers searching for a piece of bread, shadows on swollen legs moving with fear. No, I don't want to remember, but how can I forget? Do I want to remember the creation of hell, the shouts of the raiders enjoying the hunt, cries of the wounded begging for life, faces of mothers carved with pain, hiding children dripping with fear? No, I don't want to remember, but how can I forget? Do I want to remember my fearful return, families vanished in the midst of the day, the mass graves steaming with vapor of blood, mothers searching for children in vain? The pain of the ghetto cuts like a knife. No, I don't want to remember, but how can I forget? Do I want to remember the wailing of the night, the doors kicked ajar, ripped feathers floating the air, the night scented with snow-melting blood, while the compassionate moon is showing the way, for the faceless shadows searching for kin? No, I don't want to remember, but I cannot forget. Do I want to remember this world upside down, where the departed are blessed with an instant death, while the living condemned to a short, wretched life, and a long, torturous journey into an unnamed place, converting living souls into ashes and gas? No, I have to remember and never let you forget.
Please welcome Matani Rubenstein and Josh Ben Moshe to sing Gam Ki Elech.
יעלה ויבוא ויגיע ויראה וירצה וישמע ויפגד ויזכר זיכרוננו פקדוננו וזיכרון אבותינו. יעלה ויבוא ויגיע ויראה וירצה וישמע ויפגד ויזכר זיכרוננו פקדוננו וזיכרון אבותינו. וזיכרון משיח בן דוד עבדך וזיכרון ירושלים עיר קודשך וזיכרון כל עמך בית ישראל לפניך לפלית לטובה. יעלה ויבוא ויגיע ויראה וירצה וישמע ויפגד ויזכר זיכרוננו פקדוננו וזיכרון אבותינו. יעלה ויבוא ויגיע ויראה וירצה וישמע ויפגד ויזכר זיכרוננו פקדוננו וזיכרון אבותינו. וזכרו משיח בן דוד עבדך וזכרון ירושלים עיר קודשך וזכרון כל עמך בית ישראל לפניך לפנית לטובה וזכרון משיח בן דוד עבדך וזכרון ירושלים עיר קודשך וזכרון כל עמך בית ישראל לפניך לפלית לטובה.
During Yom Hashoah service, it has become customary to light 6 candles in honor of the 6 million Jewish people who perished in the Holocaust. Everyone in this room either knows someone or is related to someone who was murdered at the hands of the Nazis. Yet, there remains millions of Jewish people who we do not know and whose stories we may never hear.
During tonight's candle ceremony, we will be honouring 6 individuals we did not know. The following candles are dedicated to child victims. We dedicate these candles to them and all of the other millions of unknown Jewish souls.
We would like to call up the Newfield family who will be lighting the first candle. We dedicate this candle to Marianne Adler, born in Hungary, who was killed at age 10 in Auschwitz, 1944. We would like to call up the Breckler family. We dedicate this candle to Risia Bennett, who was killed at age 12 in Treblinka, 1942. We would like to call up the Gordon family. We dedicate this candle to Hilda Berman, who was killed at age 16 in Sobibor on June 5, 1943.
We would like to call up the Sandler family. We dedicate this candle to Samuel Bornstein, who was killed in Krakow, Poland, 1942, at age 6. We would like to call up the Rabinovich family. We dedicate this candle to Shalom Bram, who was killed, age 10, in Chelmno on December 7, 1941. We would like to call up the Jones family. This candle is dedicated to siblings Batya and Shalom Emmanuel, who were killed at ages 6 and 10, a week apart, in Germany, 1945.
I would now like to introduce Ashley Densham to say a prayer. I ask that you please stand and remain standing following the prayer as we sing Hatikva and conclude the ceremony.
נזכור, we remember. בשחר השמש ובשקיעתה נזכור. בפשט הרוח ובקור החורף נזכור. בפריחת הניצנים ובלידת האביב נזכור. בטחול השמיים ובחום הקיץ נזכור. ברשרוש האילנים וביופיו של הסתיו נזכור. בראש השנה ובסופה נזכור. בימי חיינו הם חיים גם כן, כי הם חלק מאיתנו בזוכרנו אותם. כשאנו עייפים וזקוקים לחיזוק נזכור. כשאנו אבודים וליבנו חלש נזכור. כשיש החלטות שקשות להחליט נזכור. כשיש עושר ושמחה שעלינו לחלוק נזכור. כשיש לנו הישגים המבוססים על הישגיהם נזכור. בימי חיינו הם חיים גם כן, כי הם חלק מאיתנו בזוכרנו אותם. We remember them. At the rising sun and at its going down, we remember them. At the blowing of the wind and in the chill of winter, we remember them. At the opening of the buds and in the rebirth of spring, we remember them. At the blueness of the skies and in the warmth of summer, we remember them. At the rustling of the leaves and in the beauty of the autumn, we remember them. At the beginning of the year and when it ends, we remember them. As long as we live, they too will live, for they are now a part of us as we remember them. When we are weary and in need of strength, we remember them. When we are lost and sick at heart, we remember them. When we have decisions that are difficult to make, we remember them. When we have joy we crave to share, we remember them. When we have achievements that are based on theirs, we remember them. For as long as we live, they too will live, for they are now a part of us. We remember them.
להיות עם חופשי